Crank up the volume, you magnificent history hounds. It's Neville Nifty, Quill, your nifty storyteller, back to yank you into the bonkers, muck-soaked madness of the past with eyes wilder than a badger on a bender. Today, we're diving headfirst into 1876, when a lanky Scot named Alexander Graham Bell cobbled together the telephone gizmo that turned the world from a shouting contest into a proper global natter. You won't bloody believe the lunacy behind it. Rival inventors chucking tantrums, science as dodgy as a three-legged horse, and wires sparking more chaos than a ferret in a brewery. Back then, communication meant yelling across fields or trusting a pigeon knot to bugger off with your message. Now, you're swiping memes on a smartphone while sat on a flushable Loop-Pure 2025 bliss. This tale's got betrayal, barmy experiments, and enough arse-clenching drama to make your head spin. So grab a brew, mute your notifications, and let's unravel the gob-shite revolution that made your group chats possible. Ready to laugh your socks off? Let's dive in. All right, you lot, brace yourselves for a trip back to the 1870s, a time so grim it makes a rainy Monday in SLU look like a bloody holiday. Picture a world with no smartphones, no WhatsApp, no sodding Wi-Fi. Want to tell your mate his dogs nicked your sausages? You've got three choices. Hoof it across town, send a letter that'll arrive when you're both gray, or scream until your throat's rower than a butcher's apron. Communication was slower than a tortoise with a hangover and twice as useless. The 1870s were a proper shiteshow, streets caked in horse dung, air thick with coal smoke, and a scratch on your knee could send you to the grave by Tuesday. Life expectancy was about 40, and that's if you didn't drink the water, which was basically cholera soup. Let's set the scene proper. Cities like London and Boston were bustling, but they stank worse than a publican's armpit after a long shift. If you wanted to send a message, you were at the mercy of the post, which was less royal mail and more royal snail. A letter from London to New York could take weeks, assuming the ship didn't sink or the postie didn't flog your parcel for a pint. The hot new tech was the telegraph, zapping Morse code down wires like lightning with a typewriter. Sounds fancy, right? Wrong, it was expensive as hell, and you needed a nerdy operator to tap out your SOS or buy more gin. Plus, it wasn't exactly WhatsApp, try flirting in dots and dashes, and you'd be single forever. Enter Alexander Graham Bell, a wiry Scotsman with a beard like a bramble bush and a brain fizzing like a pint of overyeasted ale. Born in Edinburgh in 1847, Bell wasn't your average tinkerer. His dad, Melville Bell, was a speech guru obsessed with teaching deaf folks to communicate proper noble stuff. Young Alex grew up geeking out over sound, fiddling with gizmos to mimic the human gob. By the 1870s, he's in Boston, teaching at a school for the deaf and itching to fix the world's communication woes. Why? Because he's fed up with a planet where half your message gets lost to a gust of wind or a pigeon with a death wish. Now, here's where it gets properly mental. Bell wasn't even trying to invent the telephone at first. He's mucking about with something called the harmonic telegraph, a contraption to send multiple Morse code messages down one wire, like juggling 6 conversations without dropping a single beep boop. He's twanging tuning forks, messing with wires, probably looking like a mad scientist conducting a symphony of cutlery in his shed. His big idea: use sound waves to carry signals. If you could send Morse code with sound, maybe just maybe, you could send actual bloody voices. It's like trying to build a bicycle and accidentally inventing a rocket ship. Zinger alert. Bell's out here stumbling into genius like a drunk tripping over a treasure chest. Meanwhile, the rest of the world's still shouting at each other like it's a medieval pub brawl. Let's pause for a 2025 reality check. You're reading this on a device that can call Timbuktu, stream a cat video, and order a pizza in 10 seconds flat. In Bell's day, a long-distance chat meant a 6-month boat trip or a telegraph message that cost your weekly wages. Forget FaceTime, your best bet was a carrier pigeon, and even then, it'd probably drop your love letter in a cowpat. Next time your Wi-Fi buffers, thank your lucky stars you're not scribbling notes on parchment or yelling into the void. The 1870s were a communication nightmare, and Bell was about to light the fuse on a revolution that make your smartphone possible. Right, you glorious history gremlins, buckle up for the moment the world got a whole lot chattier. It's 1876, and Alexander Graham Bell's holed up in his Boston lab, a damp, creaky basement that's less Silicon Valley and more shite-stained shed with extra cobwebs. He's got his mate Thomas Watson, a wiry bloke who's handy with a spanner and doesn't mind Bell's barmy schemes, even when they involve twanging wires like a banjo at a barn dance. They're faffing about with their harmonic telegraph, a gizmo meant to send multiple Morse code messages down one wire, like trying to cram 6 pub conversations into a single pint glass. But then on March 10, 1876, something properly mental happens, and it's all because Bell's a clumsy sod. Picture this: Bell's tinkering with their latest contraption, a mess of wires, metal, and a liquid transmitter that's basically a cup of acid with delusions of grandeur. He's probably muttering about sound waves and looking like a hedgehog in a windstorm when splat. He spills acid all over his trousers. In a panic, he yells, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." into the janky device. Now Watson's in another room, probably picking his nose or dreaming of a pint, when he hears Bell's voice clear as a bell crackling through the wire. Not Morse code, not beeps, but actual bloody words, floating through a copper line like a ghost with a gob. The telephone is born and Bell's likely hopping about, acid-soaked trousers and all, shouting, "Bugger me, we've done it." Let's not get carried away, though. This first telephone was about as fancy as a tin can with string. It's a wooden box with a funnel you bellow into, and the sound quality's shite, like gargling pebbles while a cat fights a bagpipe. You couldn't just ring someone up. You had to know they were already on the other end, ear glued to the receiver, ready to decipher your warbled nonsense. Imagine that in 2025. Oi Karen, be at your phone at 4:23 p.m. sharp or we're knackered. Still, it was a sodding miracle. For the first time, humans could fling their voices across a room without lobbing a note tied to a brick. Bell and Watson must have felt like wizards who just cracked the code to the universe's noisiest spell. But here's where it gets properly juicy, you lot. Bell nearly buggered it all up, and the story's got more backstabbing than a medieval court. See, he wasn't the only clever clogs chasing this dream. Elisha Gray, a Yank inventor with a chip on his shoulder, was working on a near-identical device. On February 14, 1876, Valentine's Day, of all days, Bell files his patent for the telephone, number 174,465. That same bloody day, Gray submits a patent caveat, a sort of dibs on his own voice-transmitting gizmo. Some historians reckon Bell's lawyer got a sneaky peek at Gray's plans, maybe through a dodgy clerk at the patent office. Others say it's just rotten luck. Either way, Bell's patent gets stamped first, and Gray's left fuming, probably kicking a telegraph pole and cursing, "Sod this for a game of soldiers." Bell's crowned the telephone king, but the whiff of scandal lingers like a fart in a lift. Zinger alert, it's like two blokes racing to invent the wheel, and one nicks the prize because his mate's got faster quill skills. History's a brutal bastard, ain't it? And don't think Bell's device was an instant hit. When he showed it off at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, folks gawped like he'd pulled a rabbit out of a hat, but plenty thought it was a gimmick. One judge called it a toy, probably while stroking his mutton chops and scoffing. Even Emperor Dom Pedro II of Brazil, who tested it and yelped, "My God, it talks," was more shocked than sold. The telegraph giants, Western Union, had a chance to buy Bell's patent for $100,000, a fortune back then, but they passed thinking, "Who needs voices when we've got beeps?" Biggest cock-up in business history, that. It's like turning down the internet because you're happy with fax machines. Now, let's hop to 2025 for a reality check. You're tapping away on a smartphone that can call Mars. All right, maybe not, but you get me. Stream 4K videos and tell you the weather in Tokyo while you're sat on the bog. In 1876, Bell's telephone could barely carry a sentence across a room without sounding like a drunk seagull. You lot moan when your call drops in a tunnel, but back then, you'd be lucky if the line didn't catch fire or summon your neighbor's voice instead of your mate's. And privacy. Forget-it-turly phones were like shouting into a bucket and hoping only the right ears heard. Next time you're dodging a spam call or muting a group chat, thank your stars you're not wrestling with Bell's acid-soaked, wire-tangled nightmare. All right, you brilliant history hounds, let's crank up the madness. It's the late 1870s, and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone born from a clumsy acid spill, and a shout to his mate Watson has just staggered onto the world stage like a drunk inventor at a science fair. But don't expect folks to start nattering across continents overnight. Oh no, this gizmo's got to claw its way from weird toy for posh weirdos to must-have miracle through a jungle of skeptics, shoddy wires, and more lawsuits than a barrister's wet dream. By the 1880s, though, the telephone's spreading faster than gossip in a pub, and the world's going absolutely barmy for it. Buckle up, you lot. This is where the gob-shite revolution gets properly noisy. So Bell's first telephone demo at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia had jaws dropping like a bad juggler's pins. Emperor Dom Pedro II of Brazil tests it, hears a voice through the wire, and yelps, "My God, it talks," like he's seen a ghost with a megaphone. But plenty of punters aren't sold. Why bother? They scoff, twirling their mustaches. I've got a perfectly good gob for shouting and telegraphs for serious business. The telegraph giants, Western Union, even turned down Bell's patent for $100,000, about 2 million quid in today's money, thinking it's a fad. Biggest whoops since someone told Columbus the world was flat. Bell undeterred sets up the Bell Telephone Company in 1877, and the race is on to wire up the world. Early telephone networks were a right shambles, mind you. Picture a city tangled in wires like a spider got pissed and went knitting. To make a call, you'd crank a handle on your clunky wall-mounted phone, which buzzed a switchboard operator, usually a young lass with the patience of a saint and fingers faster than a pickpocket. She'd plug and unplug cables to connect your call, all while you're yelling, "Oi, get me the butcher before I starve." These operators, dubbed "Hello Girls," were the unsung heroes of the era, juggling calls like a circus act with no safety net. But it wasn't all rosy. They worked brutal hours, got paid peanuts, and had to deal with punters who'd swear worse than me when the line crackled. And crackle it did. The sound quality was shite, like trying to hear your mate through a storm in a tin bucket. Then there's the party line-shared phone lines that were the 1870s equivalent of a group chat from hell. You'd pick up your receiver to call your pal, only to hear Mrs. Miggins droning on about her lumbago or Farmer Giles arguing over pig prices. Want privacy? Tough luck. Mate, your nosy neighbor could eavesdrop or butt in, turning your call into a village free-for-all. It's like Zoom bombing, but with more static and fewer cat filters. By 1880, there's thousands of phones in America, and by 1900, nearly 1 million, with cities like New York looking like a hedgehog's arse with all the wires overhead. Bell's company, later AT&T, is raking it in, but they're fighting off rivals like a pack of rabid dogs. Speaking of rivals, the telephone's success sparked a legal shitestorm. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a soldering iron claimed they'd invented the telephone first. Elisha Gray's still fuming from his 1876 patent loss, and others, like Antonio Muxi, an Italian inventor, reckon Bell nicked their ideas. Muxi had a voice-transmitting device years earlier, but was too skint to patent it properly. Poor sod. Over 600 lawsuits fly, with Bell's team dodging claims like a boxer in a bar fight. They win mostly, but it's a bloodbath that make a lawyer's eyes gleam brighter than a magpie's at a jewelry shop. Bell's patent holds and he's crowned the telephone king, but the drama's thicker than a Victorian fog. Zinger alert. The telephone's like the world's first viral tweet. Everyone's obsessed. Nobody knows how it works, and there's always some Burke claiming they tweeted it first. Now, let's zip to 2025 for a breather. You're swiping through X, video calling your mate in Dubai, and ordering a curry, all from a phone that fits in your pocket. In the 1880s, a call across town cost a day's wages, and you'd be lucky if the line didn't drop or summon a random stranger's voice. Forget international calls. Those were for rich toffs or businesses, not your average Joe moaning about the weather. And privacy. You've got more chance of keeping a secret in a pub than on a party line. Next time your Wi-Fi lags or you get a spam call, spare a thought for the hello girls wrestling with cables and punters just to get your voice through. In Bell's day, communication was a circus, and the telephone was the ringmaster cracking the whip. But the madness didn't stop there. The telephone started rewiring society itself. Businesses could make deals without sending a bloke on a horse. Doctors could get called before the patient croaked. Even romance got a boost. Lads could whisper sweet nothings without trekking across town, though they still had to dodge Mrs. Miggins' earwigging. The world was shrinking, and Bell's little box was the shrink ray. It's mental to think that without this chaos, we wouldn't have smartphones, internet, or the ability to argue with strangers online about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. The telephone was the spark, and the world was about to catch fire. Hold on to your knickers, you history-hungry heathens, because Neville Nifty Quill's about to drag you through the muckier side of the telephone's rise. By the 1880s, Alexander Graham Bell's voice-flinging gizmo is taking the world by storm, tangling cities in wires like a drunk octopus with a knitting obsession. But don't be fooled, this wasn't all cheery chats and progress. The telephone brought a heap of headaches, from bank-breaking costs to social chaos that make your nan's knitting circle look tame. It's a tale of exploited lasses, electrocuted ears, and nosy sods eavesdropping on your every word. So let's peel back the shiny veneer and dive into the shite-stained underbelly of the gob-shite revolution. First off, let's talk brass tacks, or rather, brass wires. Early telephones weren't cheap. Installing one cost more than a working man's yearly wage, so unless you were a toff with a top hat and a butler, you were stuck hollering across the street or sending your kid with a scribbled note. Businesses and rich knobs snapped up the first phones, using them to bark orders or brag about their newfangled toys. The average Joe, he's still trudging through horse dung to deliver a message, cursing the posh sods chatting through their fancy boxes. It's like the iPhone launching at the price of a Rolls-Royce grate if you're loaded, bugger all use if you're skint. Then there's the hello girls, the switchboard operators who kept this whole circus running. These young women, often barely out of their teens, were the unsung heroes of the telephone age, plugging and unplugging cables faster than a ferret dodging a fox. They sat at massive switchboards, juggling calls like they're spinning plates in a hurricane, all while punters screamed, "Connect me, you daft cow." Their shifts were brutal, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for wages that wouldn't buy a decent pie. And the bosses, stingier than a miser at a charity auction. If an operator dared to yawn or, God forbid, ask for a raise, she'd be out on her arse faster than you can say wrong number. Some lasses even got the sack for trying to unionize cheeky sods wanting fair treatment. It's enough to make you spit your tea across the room. And don't get me started on the health hazards. Early telephones were about as safe as a drunken sword swallower. Dodgy wiring could give you a shock that curl your mustache, and shared receivers were germ factories. Imagine sticking your ear to a device that's been slobbered on by half the town. Ear infections were rife, and some poor sods got nastier bugs like diphtheria from unhygienic earpieces. In a world where a cut finger could kill you, telephones added a new way to suffer death by dodgy connection. It's like the 1880s version of catching a virus from a touchscreen, only with more static and fewer hand sanitizers. Then there's the social chaos. The telephone didn't just connect people, it made them bloody reachable all the time. Suddenly, your boss could ring you at midnight to moan about coal shipments, or your mother-in-law could nag you from 2 towns over about your shoddy knitting. No mute button, no do not disturb, you were at the mercy of every Burke with a phone. And those party lines, a nightmare worse than a hangover in a church choir. You'd pick up to call your mate, only to hear Mrs. Nosepence gossiping about her bunions or Farmer Ted yelling about his missing cow. Want to have a private chat? Tough luck, your whole village was earwigging like it's a bloody soap opera. It's like the 1880s equivalent of your WhatsApp group blowing up with spam, except you can't leave the chat without yanking the wire out the wall. Zinger alert. The telephone was like handing everyone a megaphone with no off switch suddenly. The world's full of yammering RCs, and you're stuck listening to them all. Let's hop to 2025 for a reality check. You've got a smartphone that lets you block spam calls, mute group chats, or ghost your boss with a flick of a switch. In the 1880s, you'd be lucky if your call didn't drop because a rat chewed the wire or a storm zapped the line. Privacy's still a pain. Today, think robocalls or hackers nicking your data, but at least you're not sharing a line with every gossip in town. And operators, we've swapped them for AI assistants like me, who don't need a lunch break or get stroppy when you swear. Next time you're raging at a dropped Zoom call, remember the hello girls wrestling with cables and rude punters just to get your voice through. Makes your 5 guos seem like a picnic, doesn't it? The telephone's dark side didn't stop at cost or chaos, it changed how people lived, for better and worse. Families could stay in touch across miles, sure, but it also meant you couldn't escape your cousin's endless tales of his prized turnips. Businesses thrived, but workers got pestered at all hours. And the poor operators stuck in the middle were the glue holding this mad new world together, even as it worked them to the bone. Bell's invention was a marvel, but it came with a price, literally and figuratively. The world was getting louder, and not everyone was thrilled about it. All right, you magnificent history fiends, it's time to wrap up this wild ride with Neville Nifty Quill, your guide through the bonkers, wire-tangled saga of the telephone. At the dawn of the 20th century, Alexander Graham Bell's acid-spilled brainwave has rewired the world, turning it from a shouting match across muddy fields into a global natterfest. Cities are buzzing with switchboards, wires are strung up like a spider's web after a bender, and folks are yammering away like there's no tomorrow. But this isn't just about Bell's clunky box. It's about how one daft invention sparked a revolution that's still ringing in our ears today. From war rooms to romance, the telephone changed everything, and Bell's legacy is as loud as a foghorn in a library. So let's dive into the fallout, the future, and the final days of our bearded Scot, shall we? By 1900, the telephone's no longer a rich man's toy, it's a bloody necessity. There's nearly 1 million phones in America alone, and Europe's catching up, with London and Paris looking like pincushions from all the telegraph poles. Businesses are booming because deals can be done without a month-long pony trek. Doctors can get a call before the patient's halfway to the morgue. Even wars or different generals can bark orders from miles away instead of sending some poor sod running through a battlefield with a note. The telephone's shrinking the world faster than a corset on a Victorian lass, and it's all thanks to Bell's moment of genius and a splash of acid. By 1915, the first transcontinental call goes through New York to San Francisco, 3,400 miles, with Bell himself recreating his famous, "Mr. Watson, come here" line. Watson, now a grizzled sidekick, replies from the West Coast, probably thinking, "Mate, I'm still cleaning up your acid spills." But Bell's not resting on his laurels, oh no. He's still tinkering like a mad professor in a shed full of dreams. After the telephone, he dives into wild projects. Hydrofoils that skim across water like a stone on steroids, early fax machines that make your printer blush, and even experiments with flight, because why not? He's also a decent bloke, pouring his telephone fortune into schools for the deaf, inspired by his mum and wife, both of whom were deaf. He funds science education, backs young inventors, and generally acts like a nerdy Father Christmas. But let's not polish his halo too shiny. Bell had some dodgy views on eugenics, a trendy but grim idea back then that looks like proper shite through 2025's lens. Nobody's perfect, even if they did invent the gadget that lets you order pizza without leaving your sofa. The telephone's legacy, though, is bigger than Bell's beard. It's the granddaddy of every communication gizmo we've got today. Without that clunky box, there's no radio, no internet, no smartphone pinging with X notifications while you're dodging spam calls. The telephone paved the way for the world to get louder, faster, and a bit more mental. But it's a double-edged sword in it. It connected families across oceans, sure, but it also birthed the curse of being reachable 24/7. Your boss can WhatsApp you at 2 a.m., your mate can spam you with memes, and don't even get me started on robocalls trying to sell you car insurance. Bell didn't just invent a gadget, he unleashed a beast that's been yammering at us ever since, and we're still figuring out how to tame it. Zinger alert. Bell's telephone was like Pandora's box, but instead of plagues, it unleashed an avalanche of chatterboxes, and we're still dodging the noise, you noisy buggers. When Bell pops his clogs in 1922, age 75, the world pauses to honor him. Telephone lines across North America go silent for a minute, a nod to the man who made them sing. By then, his inventions transformed society, from how we do business to how we flirt. Without the telephone, there's no call centers, no emergency hotlines, no late-night chats with your busy mate. It's the spark that lit the fire of modern tech, leading straight to the device you're probably holding right now, scrolling X or arguing about who's got the best kebab shop. But it also brought headaches we're still wrestling with. Think data breaches, trolls, or your nan blowing up your phone because you didn't like her cat pic. Now, let's zip to 2025 for a proper reality check. You've got a phone that's basically a supercomputer, letting you video call Tokyo, stream a Netflix series, and check your bank balance while sat on a flushable Lou Pure luxury. In Bell's day, a call across town was a crackly gamble, and a long-distance chat cost more than your weekly shop. Forget privacy party lines meant your whole village knew your business, and dodgy wiring could zap you into next week. You lot moan when your 5G buffers or your battery dies, but spare a thought for the 1880s, when a phone call meant shouting into a funnel and praying the operator wasn't eavesdropping. Next time you're muting a group chat or blocking a spammer, raise a glass to Bell's barmy brilliance. You're living in his world, just with shinier toys. The telephone's impact didn't stop at tech, it rewrote how we live. Families could stay close despite oceans between them. Businesses could grow without carrier pigeons. Even revolutions got a boost. Activists could organize faster than a postman on a pony. But it also made life noisier, nosier, and a bit more knackering. Bell's little box turned the world into a giant switchboard, and we're still plugged in for better or worse. So as we head toward the climax of this tale, let's salute the man who made it all possible, acid-stained trousers and all. The world's a chattier place because of him, and we're still yakking away. And there you have it, you splendid history nerds. The telephone, sparked by a clumsy acid spill and a shout to Watson, turned the world into a giant, yammering switchboard. Bell's barmy invention took us from carrier pigeons and bellowing across fields to a planet where every bugger's got a voice, for better or bloody worse. It wasn't pretty lawsuits thicker than a Victorian fog, wires that zapped you silly, and operators driven up the wall, but it shrank the globe and paved the way for your smartphone's endless pings. By 1876, Bell had unleashed a gob-shite revolution, and we're still nattering because of it. So next time you're dodging a spam call or memeing on X, tip your hat to Alex and his singed trousers. He made the world louder, closer, and a right bit madder. That's your lot, you brilliant bastards. Neville Nifty Quill, signing off with a pearl of wisdom. Be bloody grateful you're in 2025, where you can text, call, or meme your mates without faffing with operators or pigeons. The past was a proper shite show, but it got us here. Love this tale of Bell's telephone lunacy? Smash that like button, subscribe, and tell your pals about the Nifty Historian. Want more bonkers history? Drop a comment on X or wherever you're watching. Until next time, stay nifty, keep your wires untangled, and don't let the noisy buggers grind you down.